Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the differences between an INTJ and an ISTP. Um, so, this is a mistype that happens way too often in my eyes. Uh, this mistype mostly happens in one direction, where someone who is truly an ISTP mistypes as an INTJ. Um, I think this happens just because there's anti-censor bias in people who are into this stuff. And when people see an intelligent ISTP, a lot of the time they end up mistyping them INTJ for whatever reason. These are two really similar types. They can both be very independent. Being introverted thinkers, they do share the SE and I perception axis. That can make them seem very similar. They're similar in a lot of ways, but let's break down their core differences. So ISTPs lead with TI, then SE, NI, then FE. Our INTJs, on the other hand, lead with NI, then TE, then FI, then SE. So they have different judgment functions, and yeah, one leads with a perceiving function, the other with a thinking function. So I want to talk about the difference in their lead functions at first. With TI, we're talking about the essence of things. With NI, we're talking about a story, a narrative. And so while an ISTP really often directs their life, I'm not gonna, say that ISTPs absolutely direct their life one way or another, but often they are asking themselves questions like, what am I? Who am I? The same directed questions in trying to get at the essence of a thing, they can turn in on themselves and be asking, the same as you could ask them, what is a dog? It's just a four-legged carnivore, right? No, they're trying to diagnose precisely all of the attributes, all the traits that make up dogness. One of the ways that you can conceptualize TI is kind of trying to get to Plato's perfect forms. What is the form of a dog, right? And trying to be very objective about it without any subjectivity. I'm not going to get into the philosophical side of what is objective, what is subjective, but they're trying to be objective as best as anyone can. And so they're, in that sense, essence oriented, thinking about the Platonic theory of forms. Then we've got our INTJ, on the other hand, who is story oriented. They're not directing their lives based on who am I, what am I in my essence, but rather this is my story, my life arc. And those two may sound really similar, right? You may be saying, right, what that's you're saying the same thing. The ISTP is doing a process that is essentially static. I am this. to say nothing of their beliefs, they still may believe in a growth mindset, say, but right cognitive functions are not specific beliefs. I don't care what you specifically believe. If you're an ISTP, reality is rendering itself to you primarily in a static fashion. INTJs, they'll see things in a dynamic fashion, the same way that any story is dynamic, right? It's not just the beginning or just the ending or just the climax. It is the entirety of the story and all of the information flowing from beginning to end. This is how INTJs are going to be primarily conceptualizing things, but also themselves. It's when they turn in and do the same process on themselves, it is a story-oriented way of viewing themselves. Then we've got possibly one of the and let me just go back to talking about TI versus NI. One is a judgment function. ISTPs are more closed-ended, despite having P in their name. They are more conclusive, more to the point, more closed-ended. When they are telling you something, even if it's a long story about some crazy thing that happened that developed over a year, they are, throughout the process of telling you, they're coming to a close. They have a sense of closedness. Excuse me. An INTJ, on the other hand, is they're more rambly. ISTPs are not going to be rambly. They're not. INTJs may be throwing rambly tidbits in there. They're opening it up. They're talking in an open-ended fashion. And actually, while we're talking about them talking, ISTPs seem less articulate, but speak in a much more understandable way. What I mean by that is that ISTPs, in their meticulous search for just the right thing, they won't say things that aren't precisely what they're trying to say. And so ISTPs sometimes will take long pauses, like uncomfortably long pauses, because they're searching for just the right thing to say. And this makes them feel less articulate. And like stuttery, not like stuttery like a legit like stuttering speech disorder, but just fumbling with trying to get the exact word out that means the exact thing that they mean. So that they end up speaking more precisely, but feeling less articulate in doing so. An INTJ, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite. They speak way less literally, but they don't hesitate so much in trying to formulate the words. They actually use like cryptic, mysterious language, and I could imagine this being annoying for a lot of people. Like I had this INTJ friend who would say, he had this phrase. He would say, "I'm an adult," and he actually meant a lot by that. He packed a lot into just these 3 words, I'm an adult. And it became kind of like his catchphrase. And what he is doing is he's asking you to read between the lines. This goes back to their story orientation. He's actually packing an entire story into just this phrase or just this word, adult. What he meant by that was, I moved out of my parents' house and I make my own money and I support my son and I support myself and I'm a responsible adult. I'm an adult. And here's the thing, he would never say that. He would never say that out loud. Or at least he didn't to me, right? I'm sure he maybe elaborated to someone. But by and large, he's just saying that and leaving it there. That's it. An ISTP is not going to do this. If an ISTP, let's just say, said, I'm an adult, they would tell you what that means. They're not in the business of taking a whole story and packing it down into one compact little symbol. In this case, the word adult. So INTJs can feel way more cryptic. They can be harder to talk to in that. I mean, in a sense, they can both be kind of hard to talk to. Right, what I said about ISTPs seeming less articulate, but for very different reasons. Then let's talk about just the way that they feel. I want to talk about this in very like SE terms. ISTPs feel less emotional. They're not. I'm not saying that anyone is less emotional than anyone else, but on the surface, they feel less emotional. They feel more robotic. I had an ISTP friend who, among his coworkers, his nickname was the robot. They come off as less feeling. INTJs. It's not that INTJs seem like they feel so much, but they do inject a little bit of subjectivity into what they're saying. INTJs may have a little bit of sass, and I mean sass very precisely, in that an INTJ, maybe you ask them about someone they don't like, and they'll throw in a little sassy phrase, a little, oh, he's not an adult. I don't know. That's not a real example, but whatever. Whereas an ISTP is genuinely trying to really uphold their being objective. An ISTP, I said an ISTP, right? An INTJ is not going to shy away from throwing some subjectivity in there, despite being thinking type, despite having TE second. Let's see. I think that's one of the more apparent ways that TIFE manifests versus TEFI for these two types. Another way is that ISTPs, despite seeming colder, they do feel colder on the surface in a very just visceral way. They're actually typically more interested in meeting new people, getting out, that sort of thing. INTJs typically are going to come off as more closed off from new people. And I think this is especially the case in ISTPs who have more developed extroverted functions, their SE and their FE. And so I am trying to use the words like typically, because right, this last part that I just said is not necessarily true in every single case. But maybe if you're on the cusp, that might help you be a deciding factor. Yeah, so in summary, ISTPs more conclusive, seem less articulate, but speak more precisely, and conceptualize things statically, what is. INTJs, they're less precise. They try to pack more meaning into fewer words, to their detriment. This is especially true of the INTJs who don't have well-developed TE, who are just in this in the world of NI symbols. Yeah, INTJ is much more likely to try to pack a bunch of meaning into a few words, and seem a little harder to talk to for that reason, using their cryptic language, but feeling just a tad more emotional, more subjective.